Greetings, sentient beings. This broadcast is not intended for children. There will be strong language in adult themes. And in the side chat, I see Nana and Uncle Beck.
There will be strong language in adult themes.
So we were just kind of drawing about the weather here. Now that the election's over, we're just kind of waiting for the fallout.
Yep.
In America, anyway.
Yep. Well, the election did prove one thing. The polls were right. Nobody had any clue what was going to happen.
I see Lauren Boebert is leading by about 1,000.
Oh, I had heard that she was out.
Me too.
That's what I heard too, but apparently she's up now. 50.2% to 49.8%.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're probably still counting the mail-in votes.
What's percentage here? If I can find it. I can't find. Oh, there it is. 98% reported. Yeah, there's still a chance for it to flip it back around.
Yeah, 98%, but
only
still
1,000.
roughly narrow margin.
Yeah, it's only 1,000 difference. I mean, that could switch back around.
Yeah, well, and if it's that close, they're going to have to do a recount.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark. So, and then the other thing we're discussing a bit is that November 11th is Veterans Day in the U.S., Remembrance Day in much of the formerly British Empire.
Yep. Including down here in Australia.
Yep. Commemorating the signing of the treaty that ended World War I.
Is my memory right that it's called the Armistice of World War One?
Yeah, although we have a separate thing called Armistice Day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just makes things more confusing.
Is Armistice Day in America related to World War II, or?
Yeah.
I would have thought it'd be more related to a VE or VJ Day.
Well, looks like
Did we lose you, Mage? I don't hear Mage. I think we lost his connection.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, well, he'll probably be back in a minute. Oh, my God.
I haven't been keeping up with the news. I was just wondering how the midterms have been acting with regards to how they normally act, where the opposition party tends to claw back on the government.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's normal for the party that has the presidency to wind up losing seats in Congress. And the Democrats did lose seats in the House. But at this point, there's enough things out that are still like recounts and that. The Republicans will probably have a small majority in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
And the Senate at this point is so close that nobody can tell. Basically, the last count I saw for the Senate is what it was like 48-48 with 4 seats that they still didn't know how to call. And Georgia, it's definite that the race in Georgia was so close that they're going to have a runoff election next month.
Yep, it's all marked.
Yeah, so we won't even know who the senator for Georgia is for at least a month. And that could very well wind up being the deciding vote in the Senate.
So it's been a closer election midterms this year than previous midterms.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Basically,
And
the commentators are saying that, yeah, the Republicans did a really bad showing because historically they should have picked up a lot more seats.
And they were slated to be taking over.
Well, and all the polls were showing that on the issues that people ranked as being most important, they were unhappy with the Democrats. So basically what this election said is that everybody believes the Democrats are disappointing, but the Republicans are dangerous.
Yeah, it's not exactly what I call a good setup.
That sounds like the impression I get of what the parties are like in American politics.
Well, then you'd be right.
Yeah, that's certainly what's come to now. I'm old enough to remember a time when they actually managed to do some compromise deals between the parties, but haven't really seen that happen for a couple of decades at this point.
Too polarized.
Unfortunately, a setup like where the Democrats are disappointing, but the Republicans are evil, well, this creates a ratchet effect in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's how the Overton window keeps moving further to the right.
Which means eventually we could end up with the situation where what we consider dangerous as Republicans are disappointing Democrats.
Do you think there's been any factors apart from the internet that's caused the vast increase in polarization?
I think the internet, helped it, but the Republican Party was definitely trying to push it all along.
Yeah, the whole Tea Party thing was meant to be polarizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a thing the Republican Party's been pushing since Reagan was in office.
Right. So it's more of a continuation of an evolution rather than a sudden thing because the internet popped up. The internet was just a tool that enabled it to happen a little faster, perhaps.
Yeah, it kind of happened around the same time as the internet was being really popular.
Although at the same time, the internet also made the information more readily accessible to everyone. And it made fact-checking possible for the average person to be able to go back and, look at what did this politician say last month.
Which we still don't do.
Although the internet encourages people to stay in their little social bubbles, it doesn't mandate it.
Well, social media, things like Twitter and Facebook, definitely work on trying to build echo chambers.
And Google and the Google search engine works that way as well.
Yeah.
But it's the economics of social media.
Yeah.
Do you know when the last midterms elections were this close in history?
No, I'd have to research that. I wouldn't know offhand.
Nope.
Okay. No problem.
But like I said, really it was a very disappointing turnout for the Republicans. That basically the seats they won were places that, states and districts that were already so Republican that it would have been hard for them to lose.
So Republican that they bleed red. So what was the Democrat turnout like?
Well, that was why it was turned out like it did. That
Was higher than normal, or
oh yeah, it was a much higher turnout, and especially young people finally showed up to vote. Which historically, the turnout among young voters, like people under 30, is usually relatively low, and it was a significantly higher percentage this year.
coming from a country where elections are mandatory, the idea of having to worry about getting everyone to the polls is a bit unusual for me.
I consider it to be the party's job to motivate people to go and vote. So if people aren't going and voting, that's on them.
I consider
not on the voter.
Yeah.
I consider it people's responsibility towards society to go and vote, like they have a responsibility to be available for jury duty, etc.
I do consider it to be a civic duty. But, I can also understand a lot of people don't bother to vote because they don't feel their vote counts for anything.
Yeah. Especially when you have, especially when you have people in, you have a red person who's a Democrat in a red state. I mean, what is their vote for the Democrats doing? They already know majority-wise they're not going to win.
Yeah. It's definitely in the interests of some people for people to be apathetic.
Yeah.
In a voluntary voting state.
Well, the other thing that drove extra voter turnout was besides the politicians, beside the candidate on the ballots, that a lot of ballots, were having referendum on specific laws.
And people wanted their input on those specific laws more than who was in government.
Yeah, the Republicans severely underestimated how many people would get out and vote based on the abortion issue. That was a big one. I still don't understand why the Supreme Court released that decision before the midterm election, but it really did get a lot of people to go out and specifically to vote against proposals that would ban abortions in their states.
Maybe they felt pressured to because of that leak that came earlier about them planning to do that.
Yeah. And something that really was largely a side effect of the Black Lives Matter protests was that people became aware that slavery was still legal if they were using prisoners. So a half dozen states had things on the ballot about, should we outlaw slavery altogether?
Would be nice.
Well, in every state except Louisiana that had it on the ballot, they said, yes, we need to abolish this.
Go Vermont for also abolishing indentured servitude.
Yep.
Where's in what areas has indentured servitude still thrived in America?
Yeah, I did not know that was a thing that was around either.
I don't know, the whole system feels like it gets set up to indentured servitude.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, they put a new finish on it, but basically working for corporations, that pretty much is it.
I'm glad there's a rise of interest in unions in America.
Yeah, and the MAGA push against the LGBT people, I think, also worked against them. Just because at this point, most people have a family member or a friend, who is gay or queer of some kind, and most people have already come to accept that, they're not really going to hurt anybody.
Who knew that queer people aren't dangerous, just normal people?
Yeah.
Yeah, with my family, I'm still waiting for one of them to come out and say they're trans.
a specific one, or you just think by the numbers you should have one?
Just by the numbers. I was kind of wondering why the one was gay, and one time we were eating dinner together, and my cousin goes, "I'd like to have kids, but I'm dating this girl." Like, oh, okay.
Okay, Andrea says that where she is, they had a referendum on environmental protection to increase fuel tax for aircraft and something to do with the Lyft Uber worker protection.
Most of the
and we have a porpoise.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
And most of the referendums on my ballot were mostly just procedural junk.
Any word on Bobo?
Bobo?
Sorry, I don't know who you mean by Bobo.
Oh, I think she means Bobert. She's still losing.
Oh, she is.
Mage
Oh,
was
good.
just
Margin.
reading the thing.
I was
Mage
just
was
looking-
just reading that she was leading by 1,000 votes now.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at.
Okay, well, I might have had older information then.
At any rate, it's so close, it's obviously going to have to go to a recount. So,
Well,
and
hopefully
this
they
is
can.
what I expected, that for a lot of races, we probably won't know for a week who actually won.
Hopefully Lauren Boebert will have a conscience, realize she's unfit for office, and just resign.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if
Hi,
that
Stephanie.
became contagious, we'd lose quite a few Congress
Oh,
people.
hi.
Oh, look at that. There
Hey,
goes
Stephanie.
the flying pig.
You think that Lauren Boebert will have a
Look at my
conscience?
glasses.
No. No.
I
It's
think
not
the
happening.
sinister porpoise has been drowning, so it's in a delusional brain state.
Could be.
Yeah, porpoise, you're not supposed to sleep on your back. Your nostrils have to be above the water. Actually, did you know that dolphins sleep when they're awake? Only one hemisphere of the brain sleeps at a time.
I did
I
not
did.
know that.
Did know that.
I actually
Interesting.
did.
And I'm not surprised about that because, yeah, how else would they be able to stay, like, if they were totally unconscious, how would they be able to breathe?
I had often wondered about that.
Yeah, we get very, very rare referendums in Australia, and when we do get a referendum, the tendency is that they never go through unless they, unless both parties, the opposition and the government, are supportive of the referendum. The last referendum we had was on the Republic of in 1999, and that failed, unfortunately.
I wish we had seen some referendums on the ranked choice voting. I would have liked to see some states start implementing that. Yeah, sperm whales actually sleep with their tail down and just the top of their heads up out of the water.
Well, I wouldn't mind having that feature of having half my brain going at once.
I've seen pictures of the sperm whales that look so cool.
Well,
It's
hey, Ed,
and eerie.
it would be better than all of my brain never sleeping.
Yeah.
Speaking of sleeping, I got a nap in before this started tonight. Let's get some
Was
light
a good
on.
nap.
It was a needed nap, let me put it that way.
Yep.
Oh, good. Good for you.
I was playing my video game and then I watched some.
Which
I
game was
spent
you
an hour on
playing?
my phone with my sister. Her trying to convince me that I have to tell a whole bunch of extended family members in person before I appear as female.
Why in
And I'm like,
person?
yeah, no, yeah.
Sure,
Right.
Jess.
Oh, that's always a tricky little bit to negotiate.
I would think that just
I
messaging
remember.
a few close people in private on social media would do, and then post something on Facebook or a tweet or something to announce it.
Yeah, well, that's how I was figuring I was going to send out letters. I didn't feel it has to be in person. But, I'll give them at least a month warning before I show up at the Christmas party.
I think
Yep.
that's fair. I think that's fair.
Give them a bit to get
Seems
used to the idea.
Some StreamYard here wants to keep freezing up on me for some reason.
Mark, no, that was a plebiscite.
Or not.
We have
Mark,
ranked choice voting in Maine, and it's great.
Mark, I think that was a plebiscite, not a referendum on gay marriage, and that because I remember it being criticised for that. Referendums have to be gone. Like what the result of a referendum in Australia has to be gone through by the government, but plebiscites are only like a recommendation from the people. It's basically a government-held compulsory poll with no binding powers.
Yeah, Lisa brings up that one bit of good news is that Dr. Oz was defeated.
Yes, that is good news.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he is a snake oil salesman.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, if he'd only restrict himself to snake oil, he'd be more tolerable, but he comes up with these semi believable pieces of crap that are pieces of crap, and he does it anyway because it makes him money.
Most snake oil's like that, isn't it?
One commentator I was watching says that he thinks that Dr. Oz destroyed his own career with this.
No good.
So much stuff.
Kind of like Elon
Musk. It's going to be harder for him to sell his stuff anymore.
Oh yes, Elon Musk's self-destruction on Twitter is hilarious, but
yeah.
Unfortunately, he's going to take down. As bad as Twitter is, he's going to take the whole thing down in a matter of weeks, and it's too bad because it's been a valuable resource over the course of the past 2008, 18, over the course of the past 14 years. It's been a valuable resource for marginalized communities, and the motherfucker, I swear to God, he bought it in order to do this. Just to blow it up, it's too bad.
I don't think he was spent that much money just to be self-destructive. But the other big public statement, did people catch that Saudi Arabia had, publicly announced that they're basically in control of Twitter because they're the biggest investor?
No, I hadn't heard that.
Well, yeah. Well, that was obvious from the get-go. That was obvious from the get-go. They were the money behind the whole thing.
Yeah, just they made a very public statement about it now.
Well,
I hadn't seen that.
That's going to be an investment that's not going to last long.
Yeah, especially since, among other things, they've got an American citizen who has been sentenced to 16 years in jail for something he posted about their government on Twitter. And this is the world's free speech place, right?
Oh, for heaven. Twitter has never been a free speech place. It's always been a private company.
Well, there are ironies.
I don't know. I don't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The irony is that since Elon, the free speech warrior, is coming into power, it's become even less of a free speech place. Go on, Stephanie.
Yeah, it was free speech as long as you weren't criticizing him.
It's the company itself, as May said, it's not a free speech zone. It's a private company, and so it's like free speech is like follow our terms of service or blah blah blah. But Musk has blown everything up, everything about it up. There's, it's not the Wild West.
Well, yeah.
It's becoming the Wild West. And somebody put out a tweet that I thought was extremely funny. Who wants this place to turn into $8 Chan, right? It's like $8chan. That's what it's going to be. With the, pay me $8 and you can say whatever the fuck you want, impersonate whoever the fuck you want, do whatever the fuck you want. And and everybody in senior management there, except for Elon, is gone today. They're all gone because they realize that the FTC is, ain't gonna treat this very happily. He's fucked. They're fucked. The whole company is fucked. And the best part is, so is Tesla. How do you fuck up two companies in the space of a week?
Yeah.
It's just, you got to be some kind of smart business guy to completely trash your stock in the one company that made you famous and the other one you just bought. I mean, what an idiot.
So who would be more successful, Elon Musk or Trump?
I would say, the both of them deserve ignominy, but I think Trump's in hotter water at the moment than Swede, you're right. I don't know where people will land. I myself, I'm on several Discords and I'm on Mastodon at the moment. I don't know. I'm kind of liking Mastodon, to be honest. It's very familiar. It's familiar yet different. It's a platform. It's
I can't get Mastodon to work half the time.
The thing is, anyone can set up their own Mastodon platform.
This is true.
And they all
Mastodon and Discord are very, very similar, really.
No, because Discord.
Well,
Discord's more of a chat room. Mastodon is more a combination between Tumblr and what's the word I'm looking for? Oh,
Twitter.
Yes, that's it.
Sorry, it's been a long day. Structurally, though, they are somewhat similar. Like anybody can have a server. Anybody can set up a server and all the servers talk to each other. The whole federated concept is somewhat similar, not identical. It rhymes, but it's similar.
The Discord
in structure
talk to each other.
Yeah,
I don't.
My perspective has been that the advantage of Mastodon is that it isn't run by corporate interests trying to track you and sell you your information for profit. But the disadvantage is that it's run by a bunch of volunteers, so there isn't enough money in it to buy network stability, etc.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's scalability. It's scalable, but
I think it's large enough. I think at this point it's a large enough open source project. There's going to be a foundation maintaining it.
If it gets too big,
as a whole, yes, but I'm thinking of individual Mastodon servers.
If the Mastodon gets so big, it'll just be bought up by a company and become just another thing.
Mastodon is open source, I know.
But yes, that's true. But even if that's the case, even if that's the case, Twitter's been mining our data forever anyway. I mean, we sort of, it's like
how they get paid.
As Adam Conover put it, if a service is free, you are the product.
And we live in an age of surveillance capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which has turned out worse than, what's his name, Carol? Surveillance governments.
Do you mean Orwell?
Orwell's 1984.
It really doesn't matter. You can go and delete your tweet. I've downloaded my whole tweet thing, and there's a really kind of an interesting tidbit. You can download your data, but you need to have an active Twitter account to have the images. So somebody posted on GitHub a thing to take that download and turn it into something else so that you actually can preserve the data that you put up there. But even you download the data, you delete your account, but that data is still listed. It's still living in the custody of one Elon Musk, who can do whatever the fuck he wants with it. Which is really fucking scary.
Yeah, no matter what you do, there's always going to be offline backups that they're going to have of everything.
Yeah.
For a long time,
Does the Twitter archiving, when you do that, does it also archive the chats? Because last time I did that, it only archived downloaded my tweets. It didn't download my chats.
That I don't know. But I don't trust the platform any longer, so I won't be there very much longer.
You trusted it before?
I didn't really trust it, no. But
yeah, I always gave them
I trusted it as far as I could throw it, and now I can't throw it very far.
It was like Facebook. You used it because it was convenient.
Right, correct.
And its product was relatively good, just like Google Docs.
Yeah, I gave them the minimum amount of information I had to open an account.
Athena, what are you doing?
It was a useful way to keep in contact with a large number of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of other sites that can do that.
The problem is the network effect, though, of people. The advantage of it depends on the amount of people that you know being on it as well, and Twitter being a large platform.
Yeah, that's the problem we're going to have, is that people are scattering to a bunch of different platforms. So, like,
that's what Tweed was saying.
The groups that we had,
exactly right.
Yeah,
Athena.
The groups that we had, it's going to be hard to stay in contact with all the people that were in the groups.
Oh, we can still organize through these streams and stuff.
You know what Mastodon reminds me of tremendously is the Usenet news groups. It's really kind of similar, only better because the servers do tend to talk to each other.
Hey,
so I don't know. We'll see how it. The media landscape in social media has, from the mid '90s till today is changed tremendously. It's all kinds of flux. So we'll all wind up somewhere. Hopefully, we'll all be able to stay in touch.
Yeah.
Well, one platform eventually will become dominant if Twitter just becomes the new Gab, the meeting place for Nazis.
Well, Mastodon and Counter Social are the ones that I'm seeing people talk about the most.
And Counter Social, I don't think is going to be there because I think Mastodon's the better option because it's open source.
Yep.
Who's talking?
I agree.
Now, if I can just get it to work half the time.
Who is talking?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I look at the wrong man. I'm sorry.
Actually, yeah, the way your camera was aimed, we were only seeing your forehead.
Sorry.
It's a very nice forehead, by the way. It's an admirable forehead.
It's rather shiny tonight.
Going on. Yeah, it's very nice.
Like a pig.
It's all good.
Today was not a good day.
Was not a good day.
Just happy to have tomorrow off. I yelled at for work for something I didn't do, and
I'm sorry.
That's never
it
fun.
happens.
So we're talking about Twitter being taken over by the Elons.
Well, basically, just if everybody's fleeing Twitter, where are we going to meet up?
But we should agree on that if we want to continue these. But I think I'm having some problems with Mastodon Online, just following people, and I don't know if that's the server I'm on or.
No, I've had problems. Actually, I've had problems just loading anything.
I'm on the instance that's Mastodon Social, which is the oldest one, and they're having problems with a number of people. Like, holy shit! Now what do we do? Got to get more computing power and all of this stuff. And Lavender Lady, I had the same issues. but I'm there now, and there are some good tools that will let you cross post between, like, my tweets show up as toots, my toots show up as tweets, and that's all good. It's, I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it's not bad. There's a lot of teething pains, I think, with a platform that has had its own culture that's developed, and all that other stuff. And there are some significant differences since there's no algorithm. If you want your stuff to be noticed, you have to use hashtags to, there's a bunch of shit.
Sorry, as the computer science person here, I kind of winced when I heard you say there's no algorithm.
Well, there isn't with regard to
there's no
it's
AI,
really
there's no content
raw.
selection
It's
algorithms. Is
raw.
what I think you meant.
There's no content. So yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
It means the
Very,
algorithm.
very raw.
That's
The
nice.
algorithm.
Well, I've been kind of waiting to see where everybody goes, just because I always have a terrible learning curve with new software. So
Let's just all go back to MySpace.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually,
Why not? What the hell? MySpace,
No, using it.
Usepace.
Online forums. There you go.
Yeah.
probably our
using
best
it,
bet is to have the
exactly.
person that's most financially stable buy a Mastodon server and run it. Because you can do that.
Oh, that wouldn't be me.
now that's what I was going to ask about. That even if it's open source, obviously somewhere there have to be some physical computers. So it's a matter of who's going to own those.
Well, even cloud computing
how
has a server somewhere, but I mean, I have a VPS and I could set it up if I wanted to, but it wouldn't have. The VPS doesn't have a very large bandwidth capacity, which might worry me, especially if the server became really popular, because then you have the cost of running the server. But just like for like a small Mastodon thing that's just like connecting to the whole thing, that wouldn't be an issue. But
Never heard of Mastodon before.
it's a decentralized social networking platform that's basically microblogs, and the servers talk to each other. Unlike Discord, where it's a centralized server that runs everything, more or less, or centralized servers owned by a single company, Mastodon is individual servers run by different people.
Okay. I'm on the website right now. Not a single website. Use it to make an account with a provider. We call them servers that lets you connect with other people across Mastodon. Cool. Sounds cool anyways.
Yeah, it sounds like I'll have to be setting up a Mastodon account, because that seems to be where most of the people I talk to regularly are going.
How many users do they have? I wonder.
Depends on each server.
Depends on each server, but that it's like the number of people on in the Fediverse, as they call it, has grown by like hundreds of thousands over the course of the past 3 days, which explains why it's difficult to fucking get anywhere.
Wow.
Sorry, but I have
Your
to
servers
correct
crash.
this. A mastodon was not a dinosaur by any means. A mastodon was an extinct pachyderm.
Right, which is why they call what Twitter calls tweets. It's why they call them hoots, because it's like an elephant thing.
Wow. So many people have flooded into Mastodon because of Twitter and Elon that they crashed their servers on Monday. They say they have about 1 million active users right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'd been hearing, that they were just overwhelmed by the massive new users creating accounts.
Overall, I'm not really all that concerned about Twitter. I mean, he still has to be beholden into the advertisers. I doubt this whole $8 a month thing is going to pan out.
So he's trying to charge everybody $8 a month, or is it?
No, he just
Just
No,
No.
just
it's
verified.
it's an $8 for the blue check. Even if you
And-
got everybody who's currently a blue check on, it's not going to really amount to much.
And he was
Yeah.
trying to say essentially shadow ban people who didn't pay it. And he's treating his employees abysmally.
Yep.
Yep, the rat's
Well-
fleeing a sinking ship.
Well, and everybody's
just
been
posted.
seeing this. This has been so public that a lot of the advertisers are pulling back and are saying, yeah, we're not going to spend any more money on Twitter until we see what happens.
Wow, that's a big deal.
That and he tried to bring Trump back too.
Huh.
Which lasted until Twitter's larger advertisers said no.
Twitter was delisted from the stock exchange. When did that happen?
I believe Twitter changed it to private, or not Twitter, Elon.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
took it
Musk
over.
did
So it
that
just
after he
happened.
bought it.
I just posted my Mastodon link in chat for anybody who's interested. I'm at Sidra in Twitter too, for anybody who didn't know that.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm clicking it now.
Well, I clicked on it, except it says I'm not signed in, even though I am.
Well,
Well, you
I
may
don't
not be
know
signed
how
into
that
his
works.
server.
Well, I tried to
I'm
follow.
confused. On this server, creating an account on mastodon.social is currently not possible, but please keep in
Right.
mind that you do not need an account specifically on mastodon.social to use Mastodon.
That's because there are other
This is-
Mastodon servers.
That's because there's other Mastodon servers.
This isn't going to work. This is not going to work.
Sign in to follow.
Well,
Well,
gonna-
it will eventually. It's just a question of figuring out the bullshit.
I'm
Yeah,
signed in.
people are not gonna do
yet
that.
When I click on your profile, I'm not signed in. What the hell?
I don't know.
And I try to sign in, it won't let me sign in.
So,
I don't think this one's gonna work out too well.
yeah, this is not going to work out.
I'm only
too
using Mastodon as a
You know what? You know what? I
as a
may have
backup.
just tweeted out a bad link.
Social media is our enemy
So-
tonight.
Well,
Well,
I can see
I
your
don't-
profile. I mean, I'm here.
Okay.
yeah, right now the only other thing I have is my Discord, which I never like Discord because it's like there aren't any,
Like
real
IRC.
group areas. You have to check each individual private server.
Right.
And it's just I don't have the time to be checking 50 different private groups every day.
Yeah,
What
well,
would you-
Discord's weird. Discord's weird. Mastodon's weird. I think that if Mastodon is going to succeed, it's going to have to work out how to avoid these disasters.
I bet you they
How
plateau
does
at 2 million users.
how does Discord's topology compare to IRC's?
Well, Discord has voice chat,
Yes.
Yeah.
whereas IRC does not. They're both chat rooms, so it's kind of similar. IRC is just older and actually more stable technology, but
I mean, yeah, I realize Discord has got like more modern multimedia features, but I was just wondering if it uses the separate servers with different channels on it, same thing, or if it's different than that.
well, technically a Discord server isn't. The main difference is IRC is decentralized, and you can have a bunch of IRC servers in different places. Discord is all owned by the same company.
So
Mhm.
it's like Twitter and Discord is to Mastodon and IRC.
Yeah. Something like
Thanks.
that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Everything's a little bit as if at this point.
So are people leaving Twitter because of they believe that is there moral duty to abandon anything owned by Elon? At this
No,
point? Or is
not
it,
that's
I'm
not
sure some
my
are.
concern. My I'm sure some are. That's not my concern. My concern is safety. My concern is that Musk has found himself in a situation where he has lost tons of money and he's trying to figure out how to monetize everything that's left. And he's going to take the path, in my view, he's going to take the path of least resistance and turn it over to the Nazis. That's basically my fear.
With the Nazi,
Hey, pay me $8 and you can be me. Well, you can't be me, but you can be anybody. You can be you can be anybody you want to be. Pay me $8 and I'll certify that you're I don't know, General Mills, you're Disney, you're whatever. It's just it's not good.
Well, that's
If-
already
if-
happening. Yes,
It
And
is. That's
basically
already
for
happening.
$8, anybody can get on there claiming to be anyone they want and start posting shit.
if Nazis step up financially to replace the advertisers, I see it going that.
I think he's floating
Well-
trial balloons, and he's just not realizing that.
Unfortunately, the trial balloons he's floating happen to fly in the face of a consent decree that the FTC had with regard to what you can and can't do. Twitter, he bought a company that was already legally obligated to do certain things, and he's flouting that, and he's in trouble for doing that.
I mean, I would love to see his mismanagement of this whole thing be the entire reason he becomes not a billionaire. But I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, that's not.
Oh
gonna
no,
happen.
he'll be fine. He might get his net worth down to $1 billion, which would be a tremendous hit. But anybody that's got $1 billion isn't going to be hurting for certain.
But he won't have all
Anyway.
the billions, and that's just tragic for a billionaire.
I know, it's too bad, isn't it? My heart pumps purple piss.
2 more errors and Mastodon trying to upload a profile image.
Purple, do you piss purple piss?
What?
I'm going to guess the answer is no, and I'm not really sinister either.
No, yeah. It's generally yellow.
No, well, you piss porpoise piss, which is different from purple piss.
That depends on how much pufferfish I've had.
True.
I do love that though. Dolphins will get high using pufferfish.
Yeah, I've learned a couple of interesting animal facts this week. Did you realize that a catfish's entire body is covered in taste buds? It's basically a tongue with fins.
Ew.
Tasty.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I could handle that.
Yeah, they're basically tasting the water all around them.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know if I could handle that myself. Being a human.
Catfish usually live in sort of murky waters, don't they?
Yeah, they love
Yes.
very muddy waters.
Yes.
Aren't catfish bottom feeders too?
Yeah.
Yeah, they also crawl
Yep.
around. They actually get out of the water a little bit. They're weird critters.
And here's another important question: are dragons kosher? I think we decided
Well, they don't have hooves. They don't
What
have
makes meat
hooves. So,
kosher?
They're
are birds
kosher if you
kosher?
slit their throats.
I'd say they'd count as birds in the Bible.
No, we
'Cause
decided
bats
they
are
weren't because they're
birds.
predators and they have scales. I think
Oh,
we've
that
also
sounds
It
good.
says a land
think
animal
we
is
have also
kosher if it has split hooves and chews its cud.
I think
Not
we've
just
also.
Exactly.
birds.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
think
Phil.
that's the reason we decided unicorns weren't kosher.
Okay. An animal's
Unicorn
kosher
should be
if it has
kosher.
split hooves and chews its cud.
Yeah.
So that means that chicken are not kosher. They certainly don't have split hooves.
But they don't have hooves at all.
Yeah.
I think that poultry are just basically exempt from that particular drill. Not sure.
I don't understand. How come it isn't
Not-
more rational?
Because it's fucking religion.
Ox.
Because a lot
Ox
of these.
vegetarian porpoise would be a tuna safe dolphin.
Ugh. That's not the worst joke I've heard this week. The worst joke would be, where does bad light go?
Where does bad light go?
Light.
I don't. Yes, where does bad light go?
To prism.
Oh.
I don't get it.
So
To prism, you said.
Yeah, that's
With an
Oh,
M,
prism
right?
with an M at the
Yeah.
end. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, now I fucking get it.
And don't you wish you didn't?
And I'm blaming you for the rest of the day for that.
Well, the good news is the day's over in 7 minutes. Where am I
Not
at?
here. I've got to endure it for another hours of hours.
Yeah, I've got an hour and 7 minutes here. But then again, this whole midnight thing doesn't make sense. Midnight
I've got
means
8.
middle of the night. That should not be when the new day is starting. The new day starts at sunrise.
Well, it
I've
was
got
that
8
way.
more hours to experience that pain.
Used to be that way, but we just decided that's the way we're going to do it.
So, may I share something somewhat personal?
Can we stop you?
Well, I could, but I'm not
yes.
going to.
Yes, you can. You can. You can all say "fuck off."
I say go for it.
So, in 2 days, the 12th of November is my 20th anniversary of gender reconstructive surgery.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
It's my rebirth day.
Yeah, I was going to say
Which is-
happy birthday.
Fucking awesome, And for those of you who are in the early goings of trying to think your way through your journey, and it doesn't have to be, there's no roadmap to any of this. But I started on this path 24 years ago, and the last 24 years of my life have been the most rewarding for me as a human being. And
Excellent.
I can't imagine why people would be so narrow-minded. I have so many friends who saw me through this, and some of whom thought I was out of my fucking mind, but came to understand me as a better person in time. People will get this. The heartache I feel right now in the current climate is so many people are not anywhere close to understanding the human phenomenon of what trans is, what being a trans person is. We're just people. I hear over and over again I'm okay with this, but there's this trans agenda. It's like, no, there's no agenda. We're just people. We're just
Trans is
human beings. I can't, what's the trans community? I know people who are trans who I would not want to sit down and have a beer with. Like, I don't know, Caitlyn Jenner. It's like, no, I don't want to have a beer with you. Fuck off. You're an asshole.
I'd have a beer with
We're
Caitlyn Jenner.
we're all individual people that, well, good for you. I might have a beer with her, but
Don't misunderstand me. I'd have a tape record or some recording device on me and questions.
yeah. But it's the one person who was on the show, I Am Kate, that I actually know, Jenny Boylan. It's like, no, I'm done with her. It's not you. The point I'm trying to make is that we're a very, very tiny number of humans on the planet. Well, percentage wise, we're a large number of human beings on the planet, but we're as diverse as any other given population. We're not the same. Our journeys have not been the same. I'm a woman who transitioned in her 40s. I am not the same as Natalie Maines, who transitioned in her teens in my state, and was the focus of, can she use the bathroom in this little tiny town in Maine? Everybody's journey is different. And for the people that are hell-bent on marginalizing us and seeing us as having an agenda, they don't understand. We're just trying to live. That's it. That's all.
Thank you.
And happy birthday.
It is
Thank
one
you.
of the things I've kind of wondered about, is that there doesn't seem to be any standard that trans people pick different dates to act as their new birthday, as it were.
Mine's October. When I got my name changed, close to Halloween. But then
I
I
would
have a
definitely
perfectly
prefer
functional
tonight.
birthday, so
Yeah.
which no one
I've
celebrates
got-
anyway.
Yeah, the 12th of November and the 30th. And the 30th of November, I'll be 69.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that for me, it's probably going to be when I officially get the documents to have my name changed.
Yes,
That's
and
cool too.
Basically, that's the government recognition that you exist.
at some point, well, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say.
Of course, the whole name change thing is, it's not one document. It's a process.
Yeah,
Because
well,
first you need that court document so that you can get, your driver's license or your state ID and your social security card, and 6,000 other things changed.
Yeah, well, that back in the day,
TransUnion is really hard to change your name with, though.
Well, I was just looking it up. Apparently, trans makes up about 0.48% of the U.S. population.
Seems a little high.
You can also figure the numbers.
No,
probably
decimal 48.
Yeah, decimal. 0.1
of 1%.
Okay, yeah. I mean, non-binary will push that figure up a bit, but just trans people on the binary will be.
I imagine that number I'm working off of is probably underrepresented as well. So I'll push things up a little.
It is.
Well,
I mean, it's
yeah. That's people who have been out in public about it.
Or who are willing to tell a pollster about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And a certain
exactly.
And a certain percentage of people telling the pollster are lying too. So
for me, it's you know, there was, you know, there's a whole genre of YouTubers who bang on and on about trans activists, and it's like, I kind of have to be. Oh, I don't really need to be. I wasn't from 2000 until 2018, and then I decided I needed to be because the government was trying to make it impossible for me to exist. You know, at which point you kind of have to push back a little bit, saying, look, you're trying to eliminate me from life. If you're going to promulgate a regulation that says your sex is what you were assigned at birth, and forever and ever you shall be who you shall be. And what I was going to say was, 20 years ago, I had to, in order to, not that I didn't want to go through medical shit. I always wanted to do that. But the legal requirements was you have to do that before you can change your gender marker or your passport or your social security card or your this or your that or the other thing, which I don't believe is at all rational or reasonable. I'm not a trans medicalist, you know. I think that's bullshit.
It's still that way for birth certificates in a lot of states.
I know it is, and it was in Massachusetts in 2002.
Okay, Kaz is saying he's got to bounce out of here, so thanks for stopping in.
Have a good night, Cass.
Join in anytime. Yeah, that's part of the process too, that first you need the court document before I can petition about getting anything done on my birth certificate, right, which is dealing with an entirely separate state.
Yeah, I didn't bother with my birth certificate because Pennsylvania still has the surgery requirement last I checked.
Yeah. I don't know where Pennsylvania is, but I mean, it's whatever. I've got all that stuff, but
it's between New York, Maryland, New Jersey, and Ohio.
The surgery requirement doesn't. Sorry, go on.
No, you go on. I've been yakking too much.
The surgery requirement doesn't make sense to me, because what about MBs? Like, it doesn't necessarily make sense to have an MB have to have surgery.
Yeah, the requirements
to be accepted as trans.
That's the point.
Well, part of it is the law hasn't caught up, and non-binary people identifying as non-binary is a relatively new phenomena.
Yeah.
Right. Maine now lets you let your gender marker be an X, not M, not F, but X for sexy. Yeah, absolutely. But
I thought X was the Roman numeral that I'm all 10.
Yeah, that's true too. More and more states are letting that happen. It's like that you don't need to have a gender marker on your driver's license, or it can be. The name change was easy. The name change was like, I think, $60, and tell the court you're not doing it for nefarious you're not changing your name for nefarious purposes or anything, and they'll let you change your name to whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, yes, that's the requirement here. I just have to do a criminal background check and have 2 witnesses come with me to say that I'm not doing it to try and avoid a debt or something.
Well, I just had to take out it was an expensive ad, but you had to take out a public notice in a paper.
Yeah, you had to do that too.
You didn't have to have anyone testify. It was just, here's a public notice so any creditors can find your name.
Can it be an online paper?
It had to be print, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I changed my last name back in, I think it was 97. And that was the requirement then, although they just said a print newspaper. So
it
I
could have been
actually
an
just had it
Australian one.
printed in a local free paper, qualified, but it's a paper that only had a circulation of maybe a couple thousand copies a week.
Who's still reading a newspaper? That's the other question.
Yeah. Well, like I say, this was in 97 before the internet had really caught on for everybody.
No, yeah, the newspaper was still around for 97.
Yes.
Yeah, things have changed and changed for the better. Everything's a lot better in so many respects, but it just, it's changed the worse in that there are these cesspools and all around in all sorts of media that have whipped up this hysteria against people who are trans. It's just stupid.
I don't get
What
how
the
they
fuck
don't see
difference does it make?
I don't get how they don't see the analogy between quote unquote trans activism and gay activism.
Because you need someone to organize against. They need some boogeyman, essentially.
Yeah, I agree.
Why don't they pick rich politicians then?
Because that's already the thing for the leftist and communists.
Because those are the people that are pushing this shit. Where's this
those
stuff
are the
coming
people
from?
Who pay for the advertising campaigns.
Yeah. That shit's coming from the Heritage Foundation and Americans Defending Freedom, and this is where these folks are. This is what's funding this stuff. It's we can target these people that are already marginalized and they've got no voice. So when we find a voice, it's all of a sudden when you push back and you decide. And not everybody's in a position to be able to push back. Not everybody's in a position to find their voice and say, "Hey, this is bullshit."
Yeah.
Then you're a trans activist simply for saying, "No, fuck you. I am who I am."
Yeah, just for being one of the people who, feels bold enough that you can say it without thinking you're going to lose your job or your house for it.
Athena, hi. Are you going to sit in my lap?
Which is why, that's why I go by, I may be, first of all, I'm old, so it doesn't, eventually I'm going to kick the bucket and in the near term, really. But I think it's worthwhile to make a stand and say, God damn it, we're human beings.
Yeah.
So I'm a trans activist. Whoop-de-doo. But it wouldn't have mattered if I had gone by Sidra in public spaces and forums or not talked about any of these issues. It's like I could have done that. I could have stayed stealth. I could have done this.
Yeah.
But
that's what the conservatives would want.
That's exactly. They want us to be invisible.
You're disgusting, but as long as you keep it to yourself, that's okay, because then others who are in the same position can't find out about.
Right. They want to keep you isolated.
Yeah.
I don't want another child to live through the childhood I lived through. I don't want that to happen to anyone. I don't want my childhood to be somebody else's.
And that way
I don't want I don't want a 3-year-old to be told that she's not real. I don't want that to happen to anyone.
And don't forget the other important thing. If we're in the shadows and have to do certain things to support ourselves, they get to keep their trainee porn. Because they
Well,
have
yeah,
nothing.
you're okay as a fetish item.
There's that too. There's absolutely that too.
Okay, well, yeah, how many, transgender people have been arrested for trying to have sex in a public bathroom, as opposed to how many U.S. senators have been arrested for it?
Well, yeah.
I'm sure there are some trans people out there who have done it. I mean,
I'm sure there are some, but I'm just saying, it's not
Comparatively.
like the epidemic that they want to tell you it is.
I think exactly once in my life I've been harassed. And it was easily solved. It's like, no, sorry. Nope.
I've gotten some funny looks, but so far that's been the worst of it for me. Nobody's
My-
actually challenged me.
My funniest story was a woman, a butch lesbian. You might call her a TERF. We've subsequently become very good friends, but I was in this space, and she goes, you're in the wrong place, and I go, well, no, I'm not. And I go, and she's going, and this is after licenses and blah blah blah. Everything got changed. She said, "Oh no, you're not." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I am. What do you need to see? What do you need to see to assure you that I'm a woman? Will a driver's license suffice? Will my birth certificate suffice? Will my passport suffice? Or do you need to see something else?" At which point she kept her mouth shut, which I thought was hysterically funny.
man, the problem is there's always someone who will take you up on that offer.
Truth.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I haven't run into that yet, because it's still going to be a few months before I can get my driver's license changed.
My driver's license has been changed for a while. I have an interesting story behind it because when I went to get it changed, someone from Evansville, for some reason, got involved. And he had done the same thing to a trans man the year before. So I fought with the Indiana Bureau of Motor Vehicles for 6 months over this. And the Martin kept going back and forth until finally I said, it's like, listen, do I have to call my press contacts in? And all of a sudden, whatever objections they had melted away. Because they didn't realize I had been a journalist.
Yeah, we don't want to be on the nightly news about this.
I still should have had to do it.
No. They want to keep trans people quiet, and they want to keep their bigotry quiet.
Yeah, well, and, it's like, has he done this to other trans people that didn't have those kind of resources and didn't have a way to fight back?
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
And that made his local news. I think that's why he faded. That's why he caved. But I knew people who could have made this a national issue, so which I don't anymore. But journalism pays terribly. Believe it or not, being a substitute teacher pays more.
That's saying something.
Yeah. How is the substitute teaching going?
Yeah. Today would not be the day to ask me.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, my aunt was a substitute teacher.
My condolences.
Sorry you had a bad day.
It happens from time to time. Although today did break my record for the number of scientific calculators I've seen thrown across a room.
Ooh.
Awesome.
I mean, it's not something that usually happens. So. And
Well,
someone
the
was
problem
upset.
is now you can buy those things at the dollar store. So,
Scientific calculators? I'll have to check that out because I haven't
well,
seen
not
scientific
quite
calculators there.
scientific ones, but yeah, you know, you can
Oh,
get
well.
ones that have the trig functions and that, and it's like, yeah, when I was in school, those things cost $100.
Ouch.
And a lot
I
of
think
people
they only
think,
cost $30 when I went to school.
well, the main reason they're there is because even though everyone carries a pocket calculator right now, their cell phones are connected to the internet.
And you can't have them in exams?
Well, they can look up answers. That's
Right.
why they're not.
Yeah, you don't want them Googling the answers while they're taking the test.
Do you have to keep your eye out for any programmable calculators?
That's why they provide the calculators for them.
Oh, the school provides them. Okay.
Okay, we had to buy our own. Jeez.
Oh, for colleges, you have to buy your own.
No, we had to buy our own for high school. In Australia, anyway.
Yeah.
This is back in the late 80s, early 90s.
In the U.S., I think it's one of those things that just depends how well funded your school district was.
Yeah, our schools are funded by the state.
Yeah, I had a nice calculator right through middle school all the way through high school.
The scientific calculators you'll need if you're in the academic programs just aren't that expensive anymore. It's not, and even my graphing calculator that can run Python programs.
Python, holy shit.
Yeah, I didn't need it, but I bought it anyway.
Yeah, I did run into that when I was raising kids in the 90s and the early aughts, that it was actually on their school supply list exactly which model of calculator they should have.
But yeah, that's the TI-32XS calculator or something, which is also the one most of my university courses wanted to use until I hit calculus. So
Hey.
I have accidentally donated 2 scientific calculators to that school district.
I found my electronic dictionary.
I think
What
my
do you mean by
electronic
accidentally donated? You just left them behind when you were working there?
Yes. And because it's the same model of calculator.
I wonder if this thing still works.
You know, the teachers will just assume, okay, the student didn't put it away.
Yep.
Fortunately, it's not expensive. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not expensive.
Yeah, but still a couple hours, an hour's work or something.
Yeah, and that's also why the graphing calculator was a Casio, not a Texas Instruments.
Why that much of a price difference?
No, it's because they do have some graphing calculators that the students can use, and they're Texas Instruments.
Well, couldn't you guys just do something to identify yours, like paint the back a different color or something?
I could.
Or
Getting the
even put your
Casio
name
also
on it?
worked. Like all my college notebooks have my name and email address in them now. So it's like, hey, if you find this, either return it to Miss Porpoise or if it's on the university, here's my university email address.
It must be kind of hard to get the calculator into your email box, though.
Into my what box?
Into your email
Email.
box.
Oh, the calculator doesn't have that. My notebooks do. And because the calculator is $100, I tend to be more careful about where it is. So
I bought a HP programmable calculator the other year because it was the last RPN one that was going to be produced.
anyway, I can't wait to the point where I just don't need these calculators anymore.
I mostly have to keep one around because it's too difficult to do trig functions without it.
Do them on your cell phone.
Yeah, cell phone has scientific calculators.
Yeah, I've
That's
got to
just-
find a better calculator app for my cell phone because the one that came installed, it's just a pain in the ass to use.
I use a real calc for mine.
Yeah, but just a lot of the stuff I work, I wind up having to, I've got to figure out triangles, what one of the angles is or what the length of one of the sides is going to be.
Yeah.
And why do you need to figure out triangles so often?
Just a lot of my
Construction?
building projects.
Right? Construction.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, mostly it's been smaller stuff now. The biggest thing in building anymore is furniture.
unfortunately, it doesn't seem like you have any batteries for this thing. Or good. So I can't test it out to see if my old dictionary works.
Yeah, Mark, I use an online trig thing when I'm at my computer. But, when I'm actually out there working with the power tools, I need something I can keep in my pocket. Just in case I come up with some point that somewhere in the design I forgot to figure out one of the angles.
There are plenty of calculator apps you can download.
Not to
You can
mention
even
there are sites like Desmos.com calculator and GeoGebra.
You can download apps that simulate older, more classic calculators as well.
Yeah.
You can even buy slide rules on eBay if you really want. I think.
Oh, yeah. Somewhere back about 1979, I learned how to use a slide rule. Have not had to touch one since. I learned how to use it as part of a mechanical drafting class.
Because about then when calculators started getting cheaper.
Yep. Yeah, well, through the 80s, when the electronics just wound up getting produced in much larger numbers and brought the cost down.
Yeah.
Here you go. You can get a vintage slide rule made in Germany for $7.
No. That
So
sounds cheap.
Well, it's obviously reproduction because the ones. Because who uses slide rules anymore?
Yeah,
Well, these
Mark,
days
I
you
always
get-
try to do the drawings before I start cutting pieces, but I don't know. I'm just not that organized, and too often I wind up finding a couple of parts in there that I forgot to write the measurements on.
You'd be able to print out your own slide rules these days, wouldn't you?
I don't know, maybe.
There's bound to be people who have done PDFs or whatever of the slide rules that you can print out and stick to wood and then cut up.
Yep.
Listen, I'm too young to have ever used a slide rule.
I briefly used one.
Yeah, I have seen PDFs you could print out, to make your own slide rules, because some places like schools in Africa still can't afford the calculators, so they're still using them.
Jeez, that's crap.
So for the students to be able to make their own paper slide rules is a big thing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also Raspberry Pis are also big there because it gives them access to a computer, and if they have internet access, that's even better.
Computers are wonderful.
Not to mention, the ARM chip has the lesser power requirement than the RISC chip or the CISC chips used by AMD and Intel.
Yep. Wonder if Casio, like the cheap Casio calculators, still use those 4-bit processors, or
I don't know. I just remember getting made fun of by the calculus professor because I had a Casio calculator.
Yeah, up until I was in high school, they just didn't allow calculators on the math test. You had to do everything on paper.
The funny thing is, with the more advanced math courses I've been taking, a lot of times, unless it's like really complicated, I actually prefer to do it on paper.
Well, I still do, just because that's how I learned to do it. So.
Yeah, when I was in high school, no slide rules, no calculators. That was the drill. You did it.
But some of it just depends on the math you're taking too. So no one expects you to calculate a trig function by hand.
did you ever have a go at looking them up in tables, in trig functions up in tables?
Yep, I had to do that in high school.
I remember having to do logarithms that way once.
Yes.
I only got taught how to do it briefly, as in this is how your grandparents used to do it.
Listen.
Well, I am your grandparents. That's my
as a computer science major, there's only one log base for logarithms we care about. And that's base 2.
Log 2?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
No, you're more the age of my parents. In fact, you're a bit younger than.
I'm the age of your parents?
No, Stephanie is.
No, me. Yeah, I'm 69, so there you go. Whatever.
Yeah, they're in their 70s.
Well,
yeah, and someone is now convinced that discrete math means 69.
Okay.
I could not convince him otherwise, but
we'll go with that.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hopeful. Hope springs eternal.
You're only young once. You can be emotionally immature forever.
Oh, well, I certainly have been. So it's fine.
Well, hey, I didn't have the chance to be young and cute, so I need something to make up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all have like a second childhood, or at least a second teenager phase.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I really don't want to go through that again. It took me too long the first time.
There's no question. And yeah, it's a whole that's an other interesting aspect. At least in my case, I can't speak for anybody else, but there's that I found it like learning how to dance differently. I mean, it took ages for me to just sort of, oh, it works this way. Oh, this is, no, it's funny.
Well,
it's
I
funny.
never learned how to dance in the first place, so That's
Well,
okay.
I'm speaking somewhat metaphorically.
Yeah, I know
but
what you mean.
it's but again, as someone, but the physicality of especially in athletics, it's like you can't do the stuff you used to do. No, Stephanie didn't use an abacus, for fuck's sake. Come on.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people don't know how much strength you actually lose on hormones, and they think, oh, it's like, yeah, they're dominating because these hormones have no effect. It doesn't work that way.
But nobody's dominating. Nobody's dominating.
Yeah.
That's the point.
There
Nobody
might.
is dominating. That's not the point. Athletics is
They just want to make things.
It's almost it's a ridiculous argument.
Generally,
the only time that people get upset is when somebody wins, and it's like, you can who are the outliers?
Oh, and they're also only upset when it's a trans woman who wins.
In
Well,
sport,
except in Florida. Florida is petty enough to go after people who didn't win.
Yeah, well, so is Utah. Utah went after one girl.
Indiana went after two.
There was a case in Florida where they went after a high school girl who came in 17th because somebody got pissy that she took a place that bumped their kid off the swim team.
This is the point. It's like, athletics aren't fair from the get-go. It's like people have talent, and it'll never be fair. It'll never be a level playing field. But the point is, if you're taking this one particular characteristic and highlighting it as it's inherently unfair, there's a presumption of advantage there. And the USOC, not the USOC, I'm sorry, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, in their protocol says you can't do that. You can't make a presumption of advantage. You need to demonstrate that there is an advantage before you're going to restrict trans people from competition. Because if you read the IOC's declaration of last November, a year ago, it was November 22nd, nearly a year ago.
Okay.
If you read it, you can't do that. It's in the thing, because sport is a human right.
That doesn't mean this isn't my field, and I really hate it when people on Twitter expect me to be an expert on it when they're not. But I do think maybe there should be a little more research into sports with the weightlifting component.
There is research. There's not enough scientific data.
But well, for most sports there is. That's one where there could be a little bit more, I think.
Yes, but there is data. But the point is, you don't make a presumption that there's an advantage. You do the studies. You do the research. Don't make a presumption. Don't exclude people on the basis of, well, sounds to me like. You do the research.
But also, I'm not an expert in sports medicine, so.
I'm not an expert
I appreciate that you clarified that question.
I'm not an expert on sports medicine, but I am an athlete who has competed for 20 years now as a trans woman in sport. I have never had a competitor object. I mean, admittedly, it may differ from sport to sport. I'm a sailor, and I can tell you study after study about where advantages and disadvantages are in the sport of sailing between men and women, which is a poor comparison, really.
You don't compare men and women. You compare trans men to men, and you compare trans women to women. This is the thing that people miss.
On the other hand, the trans to STEM pipeline is a real thing.
Pardon?
There's a joke among trans people in STEM because trans women seem to, they don't necessarily dominate STEM fields, but there are a lot of them, that there's the trans to STEM pipeline.
Okay, well, we did have a question here about, which locker room do you use? And that's really a question that the politicians stir up. But honestly, people generally don't really care about that.
Well, I'll tell you where I go, Hardens. I go to the women's. That's where I go. And I'm not.
I got harassed in the men's locker room plenty of times before I started transitioning.
No, wait a minute. Hardens.
Sorry.
What are you saying? Where does a man that's now a woman go to the locker room? That's your question? I tell you exactly where I go. I go to the women's locker room because I am a woman. You have a problem with that? Bring it.
I think it was just poorly phrased. Probably just means
I don't give a
trans
fuck.
woman.
It was not. It may have been poorly phrased, but God damn it, rephrase it and ask the question again.
I don't think it was meant to be offensive. I think they're
well,
actually
it was
trying to
fucking
find
offensive to me because I go to the ladies all the fucking time.
Yep. Before I started transitioning, I had a number of occasions in my life that I got harassed in the men's locker room. So I can't imagine it could be any worse for me now. I actually got harassed at a public pool one time for not having enough chest hair.
Locker rooms in general suck. They should just switch to individual stalls and just do away the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with that.
Locker rooms and public bathrooms really need to go that way.
I mean, I could go into my experience in boys and men's locker rooms, and it wasn't pleasant for me. I understand that back. Yes, James is asking questions. He's just asking questions. I understand that, and I'm trying to explain how this shit works.
Asking questions can put people saying they're just asking questions has been just kind of a
it's kind of
way to excuse bad behavior.
But I'm here for that, and it's perfectly fine to ask the question. But don't be surprised if I push back a little bit because it's because this is my experience as a human being, not as a trans advocate, but my experience as a human being should carry a little bit of weight.
Though on the flip side to that, it should be important to try and see where people are intentionally trying to be an asshole, or if it's just accidental.
Yeah, well, I think that the problem with the just asking questions is that has become Tucker Carlson's refrain for everything.
Right, and I'd love to talk to Tucker Carlson. I mean, fine with me.
Really, every conversation.
I'd love to talk to Tucker Carlson. I'd love to talk to Stephen Woodford. I'd love to talk to these people. I'd love to talk to Joe Rogan.
Really, because every time I imagine talking to Joe Rogan, I imagine doing some debugging on him with a very large axe.
Well, that's true, Hardin. That's true, Hardin. People will complain no matter what locker room you go to because the people will be assholes. I mean, people complained about my being in men's locker rooms when I was a child.
Yep.
In fact, people in men's locker rooms would grab a hold of my chest and twist my boobs.
Oh.
So, guess what? That's a little bit of a complaint. People don't, it's sometimes, listen to us. Just sometimes listen. These are traumas that are inflicted upon people that don't need to be.
Yeah. Well,
what are you supposed to do? I mean, there was earlier this year, there was a young woman who was physically assaulted, and because she had to go to the gents, and she was physically assaulted by these guys. It's hard.
Yeah, where do they expect you to go? Unfortunately, is an issue that's currently being argued in a lot of states about which bathroom trans people are allowed to use.
Well, I'll bring up Mac Biggs, right? He was the poster child for keep trans people out of sport, and he was a trans mask guy, and they made him wrestle girls.
Also, keep in mind they're not thinking of somebody like Stephanie here. They're thinking of somebody who looks totally like a guy looks basically thinking a guy with girls' clothes on is what they think is what trans is.
That's right.
Yep. Well, and like Beck is saying that at the stage he's at now, if he tried going into a woman's room, which is what his birth certificate says, he'd probably get arrested for that.
Yeah, and I want to, back, a lot of people don't get that trans masks suffer from the same presumption of weaker sex. If they find out you were assigned female at birth, they suffer from this. They go, well, then you can't compete with a guy. I mean, we all suffer from the same fucking fundamental misogyny that, it just lingers. It's like a bad stink on your hand.
Cooties?
Yeah.
It's just bad. Yeah, it's cooties. Exactly. It's junior high school level bullshit.
Okay, fair. Well, we assumed you're a guy from the name James, but that's actually the last name, so.
And yeah. I don't know. I don't know, Hardens James, what your gender identity is, and I don't presume it. I only, your first comment was just hard to take.
I find it interesting how many people will think I'm a girl.
Actually, when I came out, what I found interesting was how many people had no idea which gender I was to begin with. I had a YouTube channel doing these chats for over 2 years when I came out. And there were a whole bunch of people out there who hadn't figured out what gender I was.
Yeah, when I started doing YouTube, I was pretty open about it, but I had already transitioned most.
Well, I mean, even the beard I was using had an avatar, but somehow that wasn't giving people enough of a clue. Or the avatar had a beard, rather.
That confused me for a bit, Purple.
Yeah.
I was thinking, did you have someone else as your avatar? And they were...
No,
Is
actually,
that where your beard?
the avatar I was originally using was done by Paulogia. Because he had a thing that everybody who subscribed to his channel for like $5 or more, that he would turn them into a cartoon.
And I think he stopped that now, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's when I subscribed to his channel, I sent him a photograph of myself and a photograph of the Triceratops at the Minnesota Science Museum and said, can you just morph these together?
Well, you're so right, Lavender Lady. It's like, damned if you do and damned if you don't. No, it's really difficult. It's hard. It's a hard thing to negotiate. We individually, I think, most of us, find a way to negotiate that path. But when we're talking in the broader public sphere, we wind up like having to, I don't know, confront a whole bunch of misconceptions that are hard to kick people off of. It's like, it's hard.
And sometimes it's just not worth it.
Exactly. Sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes people just give up and they which is fine, just give up. It's like you can fade into the shadows or because it's easier to do. But it's become harder and harder.
Nothing I can say is going to change the mind of someone like Ben Shapiro because he makes his money doing that.
Yep.
Shapiro has a mind.
Well, Ben Shapiro might have, either of us or any of us on his show. And the only reason he'll do it is to have eyeballs on screens and asses in seats. That's why he'll do it.
And money in pocket.
Well, and money in pocket at the end of the day.
Well, it pretty much describes everything he does.
Ben Shapiro is the person I point to when I need to explain to people there's a difference between being well-educated and intelligent. Because Ben Shapiro was well-educated, but he's kind of an idiot.
Oh, he's totally.
But he talks fast, so he must be smart.
But he's well paid. He's paid well to be a complete idiot,
And apparently he's never made his wife orgasm. I don't know if that's true or not, but
well, never made her wet.
Well, she's never been wet, so maybe she's had lots of dry orgasms.
No, we don't know how that whole thing works out in the end. But yeah.
Listen, as long as his wife isn't Abby Shapiro, it doesn't matter that much.
It isn't?
I hope not. Abby Shapiro's his sister.
Well, I swear to God, the entire reason Elon Musk bought Twitter was to get revenge on his wife. God, what an idiot.
Grimes.
I think Purple was saying something.
Nah, it's not important.
I was just, since we were talking about trends in sports, I was looking up this one guy, Patricio Manuel. He's currently 2019 became the new face of Everlast boxing equipment. He fought transition into 2018 in the first boxer in history to fight professional fight. It's being a transgender boxer, and by the way, he won.
Oh, right. Fallon Fox wasn't a boxer. She was UFC. And she did not do particularly well as a UFC fighter.
But yeah, they would say the boxer you're referring to is a trans guy.
Yeah.
Fallon Fox was a trans woman, and
But not a boxer. It was UFC.
Truth. I'm just saying, contact sport.
Well, and for sports like that everybody's already divided up into weight classes, is there really a need to divide them by gender?
There was a study released last week. I think it was last week or maybe the week before, from the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sport that delves into the literature extant at the current time, scientific literature extant at the current time on whether there is justification for excluding explicitly trans women in sport, and it says there isn't. It's if you Google CCES transgender sport, you'll find that study, and it's tour de force. It was originally released. It was prematurely released in March of this year, and it's finally been released officially. And it's a good study. It's very, very good study and very exhaustive. It goes into some of the more ideologically based pieces of research, which for the most part compare men to women, and points out the fallacy in that comparison. It's a good study, and it's worth a read. It's 160 pages.
Well, I will not claim to know anything about it, just because I've never had any interest in sports. So,
yeah, and unless it has something to do with programming or computer science, I'm not reading it right now.
Well, the only sport I was interested in when I was in school was gymnastics, and they would not let a boy be on the gymnastics team because that was a girl's sport.
Really? That's kind of weird.
For that time, I mean, when did you go to school? That sounds about right.
I think they just didn't want to show me up. Didn't want me to show them up because I could beat most of the girls on the parallel bars.
Actually, I think gymnastics is one of those sports where statistically cisgender men have a disadvantage, but because it's flexibility and not strength-based.
Yep.
The rings are hard. The rings are very, very hard.
Yeah, well, different pieces of equipment use different muscle groups for sure, but
exactly.
People's rings make me hard.
But parallel bars were good for me because it was applied physics. I didn't have a lot of upper body strength, but if you understand physics and how your momentum carries you, that's most of what you needed to know.
Sadly, my school didn't have any. Sadly, there were no such things as programming teams when I was in high school. I probably would have joined one of those.
That would have been cool.
Well, the university does a programming competition every spring that I don't do well in, but I participated in last year.
Beck, I love the name idea.
Did you ever promise us a rose garden?
Yeah, one of my characters addressed that in my novel. That the reason their relationship worked was he was romantic enough to promise her a rose garden, and she was realistic enough to know that it would need rain and have thorns and aphids.
Who did that song anyway? I know it was one of the songs my mother liked, so therefore I hated it. But
yeah, it was one that was played to death on the radio in the 70s. I can't remember who the original artist was.
I have no idea what song you're talking about.
Well, I beg, I beg your pardon, but I never promised you a rose garden. Who did do that song?
Yeah, I was never organized enough for chess. I know how to play the game, but just the whole thing of...
It's the thinking ahead that gets me.
Yeah, well, yeah, working that far ahead. You know, I do a lot of strategy games, but I think I also didn't care for the predetermined aspect of chess. I like games that have some dice, have some random factors involved that you have to try and compensate for.
Like Magic.
Never played it.
I played that a little bit. I
have never played any of the collectible card games. The only collectible game like that I ever got into was Pirates of the Spanish Main.
I found
which
Magic
was where you punched out these little ships out of credit cards.
Oh, those were fun to build.
I found Magic to be kind of hard to keep up with.
I've got a huge collection. I've got almost all the pirate ships from that game for the 5 or 6 years that it was being produced.
It's a shame it didn't take off, but those ships were fun to build.
Well, actually, the reason it didn't take off was pretty much... It actually did quite well for a while. It didn't stay around because there wound up being legal issues about who had rights to the intellectual property. So when the company was bought by another company that was bought by another company for about the 4th time, people couldn't figure out who had the rights to produce it. I actually played the game against one of the designers at a gaming convention.
And wasn't there a couple like that? They had a Star Wars game where you punched out little Star X-Wings.
Yeah, there was one Star Wars, and there was also a Transformers set like that. And see, that was the bit of it that caused the legal problems, is who had the intellectual property to that basic concept of punching them out of the credit cards.
Wait, that doesn't seem like it should...
Well, that's why all of them disappeared.
That seems like it should be generic enough not to need it.
I would think so too, but something about the production process that somebody had some legal rights to. Actually, I still try to play that game every time I go to Con of the North. I try to run an event for it.
And Disney just didn't buy it out when they got Star Wars? Or...
Well, Star Wars just sold the licensing fee to somebody else.
Well, yeah, I mean, Star Wars will put its name on anything.
Yep. Well, that's what made George Lucas rich. They laughed at him because he agreed to let the studio keep most of the box office receipts. But he kept all the merchandise rights.
Yep.
So he got money for all the toys and lunchboxes produced.
And Spaceballs did parody that.
Yep.
Spaceballs, the flamethrower. The kids love it.
Hi,
Athena.
I could do a whole show on the reason various children's toys have gotten recalled.
Well, one of my favorite short-lived toys was a Harry Potter toy.
Is this the broom?
Yeah, it wasn't so much recalled as pulled from the market quickly.
I remember the broom.
Yes, because the little girls were enjoying it a little too much.
And the adults. It was a vibrating broom that was designed to go right where...
Yep.
Right in the right spot.
You're supposed to put it between your legs and turn it on.
And you really come up with some magic.
Oh, it sold very well. Just not for the reasons the designers wanted it.
Like, I forget what the name of it was, but there was this talking caterpillar that was supposed to be to teach kids the alphabet, that each foot had a letter of the alphabet. And one of the functions was that when you pressed it, it made the sound of the letter. But people realized that if you pressed the F and K right together, it said fuck. So the company recalled it, and they had to reprogram them so that when you do that, it just laughed and said that tickles.
Well, one of the strangest things that's not about a toy recall, but is nevertheless true, is that Furbies were not allowed in Department of Defense meetings.
I heard of that, yeah.
Because Furbies would basically imitate a language that could be based on what they were hearing, and people could guess what was being said based on what they said.
It was classified as a recording device, was it?
Yeah.
Probably would be my guess.
Well, and Cabbage Patch Dolls pretty much went off because they're eating kids' hair.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
wanting kids' hair?
They had a Cabbage Patch, I guess they were talking ones or something, but that the jaw moved, and there were several instances of that they'd get a kid's hair in their mouth, and it would wind up getting wrapped around the
No,
mechanism.
it was one that you fed.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And if you gave them hair spaghetti, then you'd have a problem.
Yeah.
Well, that's the official explanation. I know why Cabbage Patch Dolls really disappeared.
They
You
weren't
realize
popular
they
anymore.
disappeared just when salad shooters were becoming popular. Coleslaw.
That's funny.
The same thing happened to the Beanie Babies. You know, when the Beanie Baby fad crashed, you realize how Taco Bell was pushing the bean burritos.
Yeah. Oh, man. It all comes down to cannibalism, doesn't it?
To be fair,
Cabbage Patch Kids are still around.
yeah, Cabbage Patch, but they're not. They were really popular in like the mid '80s. So.
Well, people aren't killing each other for them over Christmas anymore.
That's true. Thank God.
Yeah, what are they killing each other
for
over
small
now?
favors?
iPhones, TVs, important things.
Yeah.
There's a saying, thank God for small favors. Why can't God do us big favors? I don't understand.
Please don't make me remember some of the things I read on Twitter yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, I can reconcile it pretty easily that you can have an all-powerful God as long as you accept that he's incompetent.
Yeah, it's an yeah, exactly. It's an all-powerful, incompetent shithead. It's perfect.
That doesn't make sense, because if you're all powerful, then wouldn't that by definition be competent? Like, if you're incompetent, that means you lack a power of some sort. Like the power to be competent.
Well, just because you have the power doesn't mean you understand how to use it.
Well,
that is a lack of power.
Or you could just choose, say, I don't want to be competent.
Yeah, maybe the universe was boring when it was too organized, so he introduced a random factor into his own brain.
Or God's evil.
We'll all be compromised as atheists when God shows up and say, hey, I'm real, I'm cool, but I fucked up.
Listen, I fully expect, if there's an afterlife, for me to go up and find out Kurt Vonnegut and Hunter S. Thompson are running the universe.
Why them?
Who else would find this funny?
The Dadaists.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think polytheism makes a lot more sense than monotheism.
I think
if you have one all-powerful God and things are messed up, you've got to accept that he didn't know what he was doing. If you think the universe is run by a dozen different gods constantly bickering about who's in charge, it makes sense that things are screwed up.
Well, fortunately for Christians, the Trinity is just polytheism pretending to be monotheism.
Yeah. Well, in the Catholic Church with all their saints, I mean, come on, those are just demigods. They just each have a specialty that they're each in charge of one thing.
Angels.
Yeah, well, it's all nonsense anyway.
Well, creation of the universe was widely regarded as a bad move.
Douglas Adams?
I don't know. It's been fun. I've enjoyed my experience with the universe.
That was a Douglas Adams quote, yeah.
I think it's fun. The universe is great. It's not going to matter a whit whether. I just try to make the little universe around me a little bit of a better place, and that's fine. That's all I can do. I don't really give a fuck.
Well, I identify as being an apathist. I don't care whether or not God exists. Unless you can show that he actually does anything about our individual lives, it really doesn't matter.
I don't care about anybody's God belief. I care about what people's beliefs cause them to do in their day-to-day lives. That's the thing that matters to me. But
yes. Yeah, especially since the religious people talk about it being the guiding force of their life. It's like, you'd better
but which
check on what it's
interpretation
guiding
of
you
it?
to do, yeah.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter. Whatever your interpretation is, it's what do you do? I've said this a million times.
Practical effect.
I have a nephew who's a Methodist preacher in upstate New York, and I am pleased as punch that he is telling that he loves his aunt and that he's telling his congregation not to hate her. I'm pleased as punch that that's happening.
But they shouldn't. You shouldn't have to do that.
No, I shouldn't, and I don't. It's like he has a good heart, and his message. You have to be practical about this. I mean, preachers have a lot of authority. Having grown up in a whole fucking family of them, they have a lot of authority. And what they do with that authority matters. I mean, yes, they could walk away, but if they do, how many of those people will walk into some other congregation where the preaching is hatred instead of the congregation that he leads where the preaching is love?
Well, that was the schism a couple of years ago that split off a splinter group from the United Methodist Church.
Well, that's
the argument about whether or not to recognize gay marriage.
Yes. Yeah.
Fortunately, in Australia, priests don't seem to have that much social power.
It's complicated. It's very complicated. But I would rather, I think it's really important for atheists not to make common cause in areas of social justice and progress with people who have a view towards
all right,
compassion and love. If we basically take the attitude that, well, your book says this, and therefore you're a hypocrite in preaching love and tolerance and fellow feeling, we're slitting our own throats because these people have a lot more influence than we do.
All I said was he shouldn't have to.
I know.
That doesn't.
Yeah. No,
no, he shouldn't have to. None of us should have to.
So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, but we should appreciate allies wherever we find them.
So yeah, it's just. It was more a comment that society shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
I agree. It shouldn't.
Not really.
But it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, and society does not change by years or decades. Society changes by generations.
Speaking of which, did everyone see that or maybe you caught it, that Republicans want to raise the voting age?
Yes.
To what age?
Because young voters turned out in significant numbers.
Yeah, that'll solve the problem for what, 3 years?
They want to make it 21, or what's the age they want? 25?
Yeah, 21.
They want 21, what it was before the 26th Amendment.
Honestly, yeah, and honestly, I think that they're postponing the inevitable. They're just, as long as it takes to let them have one last grasp at absolute power. I honestly think that the struggle at the present time is one party wants to have absolute power. If they can take the nation, they'll hold on to that power, and they will, in fact, turn it into a Christo-fascist state.
Yeah. And the Republicans realize at this point their only strategy left is to limit who can vote.
Right. And anything that it takes, whatever it takes, it's just to give us enough time to get that absolute power. Just give us enough time, and then we won't have to worry about it anymore.
Well, power corrupts. Absolute power is kind of neat, though.
Yeah, well, at this point, even if the Democrats took control of Congress, something would have to be done about the Supreme Court, because they're going to be influencing everything for generations.
Yeah, well, there are strategies.
Well, the first
it doesn't have to be this way. We all have to work hard. This is the problem. It's like, I am really fucking tired of this. I've been working on this my entire life, and I'm tired of it. But
one of the first things,
give up.
One of the first things we need to do, as Clarence Thomas has shown, is force judges to certain ethical standards, perhaps the ones they already have to adhere to if they want to be members of the bar. Like, Clarence Thomas should not have been on the case with his wife.
Yeah.
And I think that's one case where you actually could impeach Thomas. And it's a strong case because it was a clear conflict of interest.
Yes, but in order to impeach him, you have to get the vote in Congress. And I'm not sure what's required for that. I think it might be a 2/3 vote.
2/3 of the Senate. 2/3 of the Senate.
I don't know if a Supreme Court justice has ever been impeached.
Yeah. Yes, they have. Yes, they have.
Oh, there is a historic precedent for it.
The precedent doesn't spring to mind at the moment, but several justices have been impeached. Supreme Court justice, I think only one, and I think it was in the very beginnings of the Republic.
1805.
Yeah, there we go.
Justice Samuel Chase.
Mm-hmm. There you go. That was the one. I think it was the only one Supreme Court justice, but several federal judges have been impeached. Elsie Hastings, I think, comes to mind. And Abe Fortas was forced from the Supreme Court under threat of impeachment, I think. That was another guy who was appointed by Johnson. But he got tied up in relatively trivial shit compared to Thomas's crap. But I don't know. Thing is that we're it's an eternal shit show. That's the nature of human life, I guess.
Yeah, computers are easier to deal with. Their behavior is more or less predictable.
Indeed.
Well, predictable.
I said more or less.
Predictable once you can find that typo in line 4623 of your code.
Usually it's just a forgotten semicolon.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's my instructor at the Technical Institute said that computers are very stupid. All they can do is follow orders, which means they will make exactly the mistake you told them to 10,000 times before you can stop them.
Yep. Stupid but fast.
Yeah, it's a well-known idea in programming that computers will do exactly what you tell them to do. So make sure what you're telling them to do is what you want them to do.
Yeah, well,
and it's also
before they wander off into the ozone and do something you never expected they'd do because you didn't realize what you told them to do in the first place.
Or my favorite, not remembering months later what I told them to do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Or trying to figure out what it's doing because they fired the guy who wrote that code.
Yeah, there's that too.
Or they quit.
Wait a minute, who was that guy? Hey, it's been fun hanging out, but I gotta go to sleep. Good.
We should probably wrap it up here for the night.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me around.
Oh, it was great to have you in. I really appreciate, your experienced voice is helping me along on my journey.
And
it's a voyage, you chart your own course. I'm not going to tell you how to,
Yeah, but you're at least telling me some of the things that I should watch out for.
Yeah, it's a chart. I can tell you where the rocks are a little bit.
See over there, there's the iceberg.
Yeah. Don't go over there.
Okay. Well, Stephanie, do you have anything coming up? Any appearances you want to plug before you go?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, who the hell knows? I keep staying in flux, but I was on Neil's after show tonight and whatever, and I'm there pretty regularly. I don't know where else I'm gonna be. I keep threatening to do stuff, but I'm also trying to keep my head above water in real life. So we'll see.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Porpoise, how about you?
Just coming back to something we said a little bit ago. In one of my classes at a community college when I was getting my associate's degree, we decided to come up with the 3 most phrases used in that classroom. The first one was why, just why. The second one was what the, and the third one was God damn it. So just remember, the most commonly used language in programming is profanity.
Good point.
Athena's here saying hi to everyone.
Hi, Athena.
But remember, be excellent to each other, and so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Mage, how about you? Any final words?
Still not really sure what I'm going to do for my next garden video, but how's Momnado's GoFundMe going?
Yeah, I don't think that she's gotten any further contributions.
Do we have the link for
that? Kind
that?
of disappointing.
Do we have a link for that anywhere? We can maybe get that posted up.
Yep. Actually, it is in the description for the show here. Yeah, but I will put it in the side chat here.
Yeah, put that in the side chat. very much needed money for that. She has outdated code on her electric, and it's kind of dangerous.
Well, it sounds like the stuff was never done to code in the first place.
Yeah, it was never done to code.
So yeah, she needs about $1,000 now to hire an electrician.
To get things fixed up, she needs to have that done back up to code and put to code, and
yeah, and making sure it won't burn down the house.
Yeah. So definitely important for that.
Okay, Andrew, you have any final thoughts?
Just thank for the stimulating conversation.
Okay, well, I'll be, back here next week, Wednesday noon, Thursday at 10 p.m.
And I will probably not be able to come until at least, well, the reason I was able to come tonight is because I have tomorrow off.
Yeah, it gets too late for you when you got to get up early.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. So, I'd like to thank everybody here. Special thanks to Aunt Jur tonight for being the one bopping the sex bots. That's usually Ox's job, but Aunt Jur was faster on the keys today. So, and thank you to all the people who continue to contribute every month. Kitty, Skitscrasher, Lavender Lady, Robert X, Greg Hartwick, Dog, and Vonrek. I appreciate you helping me keep things going here. So with all that, we will bid you all a good night.
Nighty night.